love, joy, peace, the fruit of his Spirit, gifts of God's own nature poured out to us, for us, within us. His love, unconditional and sacrificial. His joy, abounding, unbridled, holy. His peace, light untarnished by the darkness of uncertainty, a foundation unshaken by chaos. These gifts can only be found in and through Jesus. For Jesus is love. He is joy. He is peace. Jesus who breaks through the darkness. Jesus who gives us rest and shelter in the chaos. Jesus who defeated sin and death. Jesus alone who is worthy of our worship. We worship him because he is King of Kings, Lord of heaven and earth, Prince of Peace, friend of sinners, and he is worthy of our praise.
Well, good morning, Kensington. Let's go ahead and stand as we worship and celebrate Jesus. You can have my yes, with no exception. I'm laying down my right to second guessing. You can have my yes. I'm giving you my fear, I stand, and you never do. Will you sing? So I throw up my hands and praise you, 'cause all that I have is except for a heart singing And I know it's not much, but nothing else fit for a king, except for a heart singing. Hallelujah.
I love it. I love it. You guys can be seated. I mean, how much of a gift is it to have such gifted and talented individuals leading us in worship week in and week out? I mean, it's such a privilege, man. Thank you guys so much. Honestly, you guys are absolutely incredible. Listen, my name is Sam. So glad to be here with you guys today. And I just want to tell you about a few things that are happening here in the life of Kensington Orion. So if you're joining us online, welcome. You've tuned into the Orion campus. And we have all kinds of crazy things happening. First of which that I want to talk about is Bible Basics, which is launching tomorrow. So if you want to sign up for Bible Basics, it's kind of a crash course into Christianity, theology, all the things. It's a great way for you to sort of get plugged in, understand the Bible a little more. Make sure that you jump in on that. You can sign up at the hub. Also, we have Alpha launching, and Alpha is just absolutely incredible, and they are launching June 19th, which is a week from tomorrow. Now, they got a table set up in the lobby. The Jim is out there who leads that, who has a little QR code on his necklace. On his necklace. I guess it's more of a lanyard. I don't know if Jim would appreciate me saying, hey man, nice necklace, right? On his lanyard that you can take a picture of, and you can sign up right then and there. And so make sure you guys jump in on that. There's all kinds of ways for you guys to get plugged in around here. Sunday morning is just scratching the surface of what we do here at the Orion campus. Another way for you to get involved is to jump in through kids ministry. Hey, you guys excited about that? Yeah? Listen, I want to tell you something, okay? As electric as that just was with the band up here leading and everything, I promise you the most electric space on a Sunday morning in this building is the K-Kids area. When you go through those doors back there, man, those kids are pumped to be here. I mean, could be one of the most exciting hours of their entire week, and we would love for you to be a part of that. And so it's easy to volunteer. You can scan this QR code to jump in. And if you want to just maybe give it a whirl this summer and say, yeah, I'll commit to like a month or two, maybe check it out once or twice, see how you like it. It's great. How many places can you go on earth where you come in and you're not only the expert, but you're also like the superhero of the day, right? These kids show up excited to see you, excited to hear from you, excited to be with their friends. It's a great opportunity for you to sort of build a foundation in these kids that could potentially last them an entire lifetime. And so if you're looking for ways to get plugged in, you're looking for ways to connect, Bible Basics is great, Alpha is great, and then serving in K-Kids is awesome as well. And now if you're already plugged into K-Kids, if your kids go there or you're a volunteer or whatever, you know that today after service, in the stream greeting, I called it a golf trip. Who doesn't love going on a golf trip, right? So it's kind of like that. It's actually mini golf, which is kind of like a golf trip. But they're playing putt-putt golf this afternoon at 1 o'clock at Willow Springs Golf Center, which is just right up Lapeer Road here. And we would love for you to be a part of it. So far, the weather has held off, so we're thanking Jesus for that. I think the two guys at the door were doing an anti-rain dance. Were they doing that as you walked in? I know they were doing it this morning because they didn't want to stand in the rain. And so if the rain holds off, we're having it. If not, we'll call you and let you know, but go ahead and register at kensingtonchurch.org/Orion mini golf, okay? How many of you guys are going on the golf trip, huh? Golf trip? Doesn't it sound more appealing when you call it that rather than putt-putt? Anyway, let me ask you this. How many of you guys were with us last weekend at our Hope Water 5K? How many of you were able to make it out to that? Maybe you ran in it, you did the thing. Listen, I gotta throw some major props to Lake Orion campus's own Sue Gibson. Where's Sue? Sue's in here. She's right here. This is Sue. We need to give it up for Sue because here's the deal. She was first place overall for females in this thing, okay? She was cruising. We said go at the start line. I took a swig of water, and then Sue came sprinting across the finish line. I mean, she was straight cruising at this thing. But our 5K is a way that we raise money to build wells in Kenya for the Pokot people. And so we were able to raise enough, I think was it 2 wells that we were able to cover for this? 1, 2, somewhere in there. But I mean, the trajectory of this year is actually incredible. Craig's going to talk about it later. But it was an awesome time. We had, I think, over 300 people participate in the 5K and in the fun run. We had a bunch of families participate in it. And so it's great. We're doing a gala in the winter to also raise, if you're like, I love the idea of building wells, don't love the idea of running, then the gala is probably more your pace. But if you like running, this was an awesome opportunity to do that, so make sure you jump in next year for that as well. Now, my final announcement, okay? Do you guys feel like this is the end of a Micro Machines commercial? Am I just like, hey, right? One more thing, okay? Hang with me. We're raffling off a 1972 Mustang convertible, okay? Absolutely incredible. The Full Throttle team, through some donations and things, made this available for Kensington. And so we are raffling this thing off for $20 a ticket, or you can buy 3 tickets for $50. And all the proceeds, all the money that comes in is going to fuel our Move Out Network. Now, our Move Out Network is a series of groups, like 50 plus groups, who are basically the hands and feet of Jesus to our surrounding communities, to our region, to our entire state. I'm talking like Micah 6 in Pontiac. We got people doing community gardens up in Traverse City. I mean, it's all over. And so this is an awesome opportunity, listen, for a Father's Day gift, okay? Don't get your dad the socks and the tie that he doesn't want. Get him this bad boy, okay? All right, $20 a ticket, 3 for $50. You can scan the QR code, or you can go to kensingtonchurch.org/Mustang to participate in that. And then the drawing will be the day after Father's Day, which is the 19th. What else is happening on the 19th? Alpha, guys, I just said it. Come on. Trek with me here. Alpha starts on the 19th as well. Listen, we're super glad you guys are here. Today's kind of a special day, if you didn't know. We are actually having a vote to affirm our annual budget and our elders. And so there's a video that was shot with Craig Mays and Brian Mowry, our new senior pastor. And so go ahead and check out the screens while they sort of set up the vote.
Well, good morning, Kensington. I'm standing here with Brian Mowry, our new senior pastor, and I just want to say, Brian, we're so super excited, the staff, the congregation, to actually welcome you here. So I thought it'd be great for you to give a brief update in terms of what your plans are for the summer.
Yeah, well, we're so excited. First off, just wanted to thank everybody for your prayers. I've had several people come up to me and say, Brian, we're really praying for you, and we're just so thankful for that. Just a couple weekends ago, we found our home in Michigan, which was a huge win. The girls are so excited. They're running through the house, picking their rooms, and that's just really pulling us and drawing us here to Michigan, which is so exciting. I've been working with the staff teams and the lead pastors as we really look ahead at this upcoming year, and we have some exciting things to share in the weeks to come. But we're going to be coming in mid-July, moving in mid-July, and then I'll be officially starting on staff August 1st. So thank you so much for all your prayers, and we're just really excited to join you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We're it can't be soon enough for us. The vote is a while ago, and so now we're like holding our breath and waiting. But also want to let you know that my role moving forward is going to be to assist Brian in the transition. I mean, there's a big change for you, and I know Kensington pretty well over 20-some years. And also, by virtue of the bylaws, you're going to be stepping on to the elder board, and of course, we're voting today on the budget and on the elders. And then I'll be stepping off, but serving as the executive director under you for the next year.
Yes, I'm so excited that Craig is staying, and we've had a great partnership already and just a love for one another. And so thanks for that, Craig. Well, friends, we love you. We're so excited to join you in August. And thank you for making this affirmation vote today for the budget and the elders. Super, super elder team that I've loved to travel with, and so excited to work with them as well. But have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.
Morning. Are y'all awake today? Or was Sam just boring? All right, I'm giving you permission this morning. If the person next to you is not responsive, just throw them an elbow. It's all right. Practice right now. Just give whoever. Kidding, I guess. Some of you are like, oh, okay. So today we are going to move into our vote. So hopefully you've had a chance up till now to go to the webpage, kensingtonchurch.org/annual report, and see the elders, the faces, the names, even the budget. What we are going to do in the next couple of minutes when we get to the vote is we're going to rotate back and forth a picture of the elders, kind of face and name, so you can see there, so you see who's who up there. You see me down there in the corner. I had the opportunity to be invited to our elder board this last year. So as you vote this morning, you're going to get nice buttons that will have my face on it as you walk out the door. We'll give a little gift to you. And then we'll rotate that with our kind of high-level numbers for our budgets broken down by campuses as well. So here's what we'll do. When we go into it, there's going to be a screen with several different options. You can vote on our app. You can vote through just going to the website, or there's going to be a QR code that you can scan, which will take you directly there as well. So once a year, this is part of what we do as a community, is we just affirm the annual budget, affirm the elders for another 12 months of leadership in their position, and then there's comments and things that you can write in there as well. So I'm going to walk away in just a minute, give you a few minutes to be able to do that, get the website pulled up, and be able to cast your vote on both of those two issues. So this is a bigger moment for us than usual because it falls in line with Brian also joining us, which I just think it's setting us up for a very exciting future right now as we have been working hard as staff and elders and as our leadership team figure out lots of things budget-wise and leadership and the future, and Brian stepping right into the middle of all of that with us right now. Like this is an exciting moment for us together as a family to be able to lean into that and to be able to affirm as we move into the next year and the years to come. So I'm gonna leave, give you a couple minutes, do what you gotta do in that vote, and then I'll be back up. All right, I trust we have all done what we needed to do with that vote. Somebody I was just sitting next to asked me if I knew what kind of leaves are on my shirt. I do not. I know two things. I know they're vines, and we're in a grapes and vines series, so there you go. This is my representation of the series. And I know my wife bought it for me 2 months ago and has been telling me to wear it. And I have not worn it. And then she put it on the bed last night, which was a clear sign. And then she texted me this morning before I got up for the first service, "Are you wearing that shirt today?" I'm like, "Message received, babe. Got the shirt on." So gentlemen, learn from my stupidity. She gets you a shirt, put the shirt on and wear it. Don't wait so long. So super excited to jump into this week of the series. This is the third week of a series we have been in now that will go for a few more weeks, attempting to really dive into the layers of, I think, one of the most important teachings that Jesus ever gave, where he used the illustration, the visual of vines and grapes and pruning and growing. There are there are a couple of times where we will do a series throughout the year that from week to week, the series could stand independent. Like it doesn't necessitate that you watch the previous weeks to make sure that you understand the week that we're in. This isn't necessarily a series like that. This one builds on itself a little bit more. The reason I'm saying that is because if you have not been able to catch up with us in the last couple of weeks, strongly encourage you to go back and listen to the last few and just kind of pull yourself forward into the series, particularly for this one. Because when you have a passage like we're going to look at in just a minute, this is kind of our home base for the series, John 15. When you have a passage where Jesus is teaching things like staying attached to him, or being cut off, being pruned, being thrown in fire, being cast away versus being drawn in, or even says things like the evidence of a genuine, vital, real relationship with God is fruit being born in and through your life. Like when he's laying down some of what he is in a passage like this is a moment that you give it supreme attention and you lean in. Like if you're trying to live your life following after God, understanding him, understanding relationship, like these are things you don't want to misunderstand. But there are also things that are so layered with one another that to attempt to understand any of them, we really have to try to understand all of them. That's part of the reason we have a series that's a little bit longer than we usually do. This one's a 5-week. It's not normally about how long that we do a series. We could truthfully make it even longer to do justice to this text, but it is our attempt to say there's a lot here. There's a lot to understand. There's a lot of layers here, and we're going to try and do our best to give justice to, I think, such an important moment of Jesus' teaching that was not just for 2,000 years ago. It is every bit as much for you and I today and for all that will follow us forward. So what I want to do is I want to take us back to John chapter 15 for a moment. Although we're going to leap from there to another passage in just a little bit, we're going to kind of keep a foot in both places, kind of in John as well as in a book called Galatians. I want to start in John because this is what launched it all for us. Just kind of bring it mentally and emotionally back to where we've been the last couple of weeks. So this is Jesus, John 15, verse 1. I am the vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that does not bear fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word that I have spoken to you. Remain in me as I remain also in you. For no branch can bear fruit by itself, it must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up and thrown into the fire and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. And if you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this, so that your joy, my joy, may be in you, and your joy may be complete. Let me pray. Father, I just acknowledge that you, Jesus, are here, and you're also able to speak. I believe you've done that through this book, but you also do it through your Spirit. And so in the combination of how you can whisper to the deep places of our soul and with this book and what you have already spoken into it, would you speak today? Would you be loud? Would you be clear? Would you be the voice more than any other that's heard today from this stage? I pray, God, with just an incredible awareness today that I am no different than anybody else in this room attempting to understand you and walk with you, do life with you. And some days I think I'm doing it the way you had intended, and other days I really mess it up. Some days I think I get you, and other days I feel like you are a complete mystery. And I just pray that this morning what you would do is to draw all of us closer to yourself. That you would take something that you, Jesus, really did physically 2,000 years ago, stand in front of a group of people. You spoke these words. You taught this in a way that it should ripple through time and history, that it would get to our ears and our hearts today. And so would you be the one that speaks these words to us? I pray, God, that you would help us to have a greater sense of understanding of what it is you have made us for in relationship with you, how that relationship works. What's our job and what's your job? Help us untangle some of where maybe we've confused your role in our lives versus what we think is our job and our role. And God, in all things, I pray today that you would be glorified. I pray that you'd help me as I attempt to stand up here to the mighty task of representing you. I pray that my words will be true to you, Jesus. My words will be true to the scriptures you have given us. And I pray, God, that you would help me in all of my shortcomings not to be a barrier or to be in the way of anything that you would have to do or to say to each of us today. It's in your name we pray. Amen. All right, before we go any further, we're going to take up our offering this morning. One of the things I love to do is when we do take our offering, because some of you, this is very much a part of your walk with God. Like you don't need to be told to do it. You don't need to be asked. Like you're doing it. Like God, you're just aware. God's given me everything I have, and I'm just giving portions back. But I think it's also important that for some of us, as we're growing in this journey of giving and why and what do we do, to always attach some of the reasons why we do this so that we don't mistake that this is just about money. The 5K that Sam talked about, for example, a minute ago, through, I think, December till present, we have actually raised enough money. 5K has been a part of that, the gala, some other things, for 13 wells now, just at this point in the year. We're only like midway through the year, and we've already raised enough money to put 13 wells in Kenya. And I don't know, some of you I know have had the chance to be over there. There's even a group of guys that were just recently there a couple weeks ago. They got back from a trip to Kenya. Like, it's one thing to hear about an area with no access to clean water, but when you go there and you see babies with disease, when you see that the bees will attack you because there's such a lack of water, that if you have tear ducts with, water screening out, like they'll go for your tear ducts, they'll go for your tears, they'll go for your saliva. Like children tend to die oftentimes because of bee stings, because the bees are so thirsty, they're trying to get water off of them. Like, it's just an unbelievable situation. Each well that we put in, about 1,000 people are supplied with new, clean drinking water. Sometimes water for the first time ever. They didn't have any access to water, and some of them, it's just clean water when they only had access to dirty water. But now with 13,000 people that are getting water already at this point in the year because of the generosity throughout Kensington. Like, those are some of the reasons that we do this moment, that we give. Obviously, it's already gone through and we've given it. And I just want to say, to those of you that make that happen, thank you. To those of you that aren't a part of it, we'd love to have you join us on this. Even if you've never done it and you just want to try it for the summer, I'm telling you, there are few things, if not anything, I do with my money, my family and I, that I feel that there is a greater reward than being responsible back to God with. If you're walking with Him, if you're in journey with Jesus, I'm just telling you, this is part of that journey. And so I'd love to have you, if you're not a part of it, join us for the summer. Just see, put your toe in the water, feel it out for the summer, and be a part of us helping just really get outside of these walls and realize that our faith is not meant to just be in a service on a Sunday. It's meant to be in the rest of the world throughout the rest of the week. This is one of the ways we get it done. All right, with that, let's jump in. So those 11 verses that we just read a minute ago out of the book of John, if I was to distill those down to two main ideas that we have covered so far in the series, it would be this. Idea number one, this is week one. It is the necessity for you and I to stay absorbed into a relationship with God through this practice that He calls abiding. Jesus says, if you abide in me, then you're going to bear fruit. That our job, above and beyond all else with Jesus, is to figure out how do we do this abiding thing, where we are in vibrant relationship. He's not just a belief system. It's not just a religious ideology. That there's actually relationship to have with God, not just in eternity, right now, right here. And that's this idea that He calls abiding. That's week one. Week two, which was last week, is that in that abiding relationship, Jesus will do this work of pruning, where He will prune us in a way that sometimes is painful. It's not punishment, but it is for purpose. And the purpose is to produce spiritual fruit through our lives. Now, if this is kind of the distilled down of John 15, then it would be important for us to understand the nature of fruit. If all of this, the abiding is that He would bear fruit, the pruning is that we would bear more fruit, then we should probably have a good understanding of what fruit is, which is why for the next couple weeks of the series, we're going to shift. And this is where we're going to put our foot in another passage. We're going to keep one foot in John. We're going to put the other foot in Galatians chapter 5. The reason is, and this is one of the things that's so powerful about the Bible, is that there are parts of the Bible that will interpret and explain other parts of the Bible. So that doesn't leave mystery what shouldn't be mystery. So when God places so much emphasis on this idea of spiritual fruit in our lives, it would be a real shame if He never defined it. He's like, figure it out. But instead in Galatians, He's like, let me tell you what spiritual fruit actually is and what it looks like. So Galatians chapter 5, this is where we get a list. God writes through the Apostle Paul, verse 13 of chapter 5, these words. But you, my brothers and sisters, you are called to be free. However, do not use your freedom to indulge in the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. If you bite and devour each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. And so I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. The acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live this way will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. And since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking and envying each other. All right, so I'm going to play a quick little game with you. This is not a trick game. This is just to get our mind where it needs to be for this morning. I'm going to put some pictures of fruit up on the screen, and you're going to help me determine very quickly if it's rotten fruit or good fruit, bad fruit or good fruit. Ready? First one, bunch of grapes. What? Did somebody say good? You eat nasty grapes. That's rotten. All right, next picture. Strawberries. Good. All right, next one, plate of fruit. It's funny, you guys had the same reaction that the first service did. It's just a picture, y'all. All right, so what did you say? What is this one? Exactly. Yeah, it's a little, both? Yeah, probably. I guess the grapes look okay. Strawberries, not having them. All right, last picture. This is a total trick question. All right, where's my bad people? These are bad. Okay, you're my people. Where's my, that's a good banana. Okay, you can go to our Troy campus. I'm praying for your salvation. Like, this is nasty. No banana should have brown spots. I am anti-brown spot banana guy. I want my bananas green and hard to peel. That's how I eat them. This is gross. Okay, you can say whatever you want. Go to Troy. I'm telling you, these are the way you should eat them. So here's the reality. As Paul is writing here, part of what Paul is saying is our lives will bear one of two kinds of fruit. You don't have another option, and you can't get out of this. Your life will bear one of two kinds of fruit, either good fruit or bad fruit. And the fruit will have indicating marks as to whether or not it's good fruit or bad fruit. He distinguishes them. There is fruit of the flesh, and there is fruit of the Spirit. And our lives, by looking at our lives, by being in relationship with Him, they will have indicating realities, indicating marks, just like those pictures up there, that will say this is either good fruit or this is bad fruit. And so what Paul is saying is part of the work that God does in our lives is He begins to create this fruit within our lives. Now, all of which is a great analogy. It's a great metaphor, but we don't want to leave things just metaphor. Like, we want to understand, okay, but how does fruit grow? Like, what does that mean that God produces fruit, and how does it get produced? And what's our job in the production of it? What's His job in the production of it? So I want to read for you what I read this week from just a pastor who, this was his explanation, and I'm going to kind of tip my hand on this one. Spoiler alert. He's wrong, what I'm about to read, and I'm telling you he's wrong just so we don't I read it and you're like, oh, that's really good, and then I tell you, no, that's actually the wrong, and you're like, boop. So it's wrong, but I want to read it to you because this has subtly become for many of us, and maybe some of us today will realize it. It's become the underpinning of how we have pursued relationship with God and what we believe to be His work versus our work. So this is what one pastor's opinion is. So what is it? Spiritual fruit. It means living one's life with good morals and motives, as well as doing good things for others. It's striving to produce fruit because that's the true mark of godliness. It also has the power to then draw people to Jesus through the Christian's actions. Anybody know why that's wrong? Now, where's it put all the emphasis? Not on the fruit. The doing. You. Exactly. It puts all the emphasis on what you can do, what you can create, what you can produce. Listen to just a couple key words in that statement. Living, doing, striving, drawing. It's all about what you can do and what you can create. Here's the reason that that's wrong. There is this dangerous, subtle reality that many of us have fallen victim to that has become how we pursue God. And it is this, that fruit doesn't simply become a product of the fact that we're in relationship with Jesus, ongoing, vibrant, abiding. It becomes the means and the method by which to get into relationship and stay in the relationship. In other words, the better we can be, the more favored we will be, the more he will love us, the more he'll be drawn to us. If we clean ourselves up a little bit, then we can get in relationship with God. It's this idea that as long as the scales tip a little bit heavier on the good stuff than the bad stuff, he and I are in a decent place. But the minute the scales maybe tip the other direction, we start getting knocked down on the rung of God's favorite list. And even though we may not describe it that way, it bears itself out in our relationships and in how we live. It bears itself out in the fact that for some of us, we just live with a constant gnawing sense of guilt and shame because we know we can't live up to the standard that is perfect. Some of us, it bears out in the fact that we're super judgmental of everybody else. Because instead of looking at ourselves, we look at everybody else and nobody measures up. And so we're just passing judgment on everybody else. It bears itself out in the fact that we put far more emphasis in spiritual morality than in actual vibrant relationship with Jesus. And we're just kind of going through life, checking off the box of the good and the bad and the good and the bad and the good and the bad, passing judgment on everyone else, including ourselves. And it either leads us to one of two places ultimately, to a place of deep despair or absolute arrogance. This is not how spiritual fruit is produced. This is how self-righteousness is produced. This is how moral deism is produced. I heard one pastor once describe it this way: if you think you're going to create the spiritual fruit in your life, that's like taking a piece of fruit and then taping it to a tree and thinking it's going to grow healthy. The minute you start taping it to the tree, it's already done its process to begin to die. Like, we cannot create this. This is part of what we have to understand, is that the work of spiritual fruit being created in us and through us is not our job, that's his job. As a matter of fact, even think of how it's described. It's not called fruit of the try harder. It's not called fruit of the go to church more often. It's not called fruit of the be better or do better. It's not called fruit of Craig. It's not called fruit of Karen. It's not called fruit of Sam. It's not called fruit of Susan or whatever your name is. It's called fruit of the what? The Spirit. That's possessive. That means if it's fruit of the Spirit, it's his work, it's his labor, it's his effort, it's his fruit. You and I are merely the beneficiaries of what he does. It's his work. Let me show you a passage. Again, this is where we're going to have a foot in both passages. John 15. If you go back there from one, actually don't go back there. It'll just be on your screen. It's one verse. John 15, Jesus said, "I'm the vine, the true vine. My Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while everyone that does, he prunes so it will bear more fruit." Verse 3, watch this. "You are already clean." Say already clean. You are already clean because of the words I've spoken to you. Here's what's interesting. As Jesus is saying this to his disciples, he's 24 hours away from his execution. A part of which will involve the utmost betrayal of the people he's speaking to. And he knows it. It's not a mystery to him. That's not a surprise to him. That's not going to happen 24 hours from now. He's going to go, "What? You too?" He knows this is coming. And yet he looks at the men who are going to betray him in the deepest way. Some of them, even Peter, who will have multiple attempts to rectify his betrayal. Do you know him? No. Are you sure you weren't with him? No. I think you're one of his. I'm not. 3 times. These people are going to leave him high and dry. They're going to run when they should have stayed. They're going to lie when they should have told the truth. They're going to completely betray him. And Jesus' words to them only 24 hours away from that moment is, "You are already clean." So here's what's so important to understand. When we start talking about the production of fruit in our lives, do not think that fruit is what gets you into relationship with God. Do not think that it's the work you have to do to be in favor with God. Not when the people who are about to betray him, he looks at them and says, before even their betrayal, "You're already clean." The issue of fruit isn't an issue of salvation. It's not him saying, "This is how you get into relationship with me." There's a story I heard this last year from a pastor who I love to follow. He's out in Colorado. So this is a story that he tells, having heard. So I'm going to tell a story of a story. So I'm totally stealing this one, but it's a great story. So he tells this story that there was this mom who had a son who her son wanted nothing to do with church, nothing to do with God, nothing to do with faith whatsoever. So she talks him into going to this concert. And at this concert, it's a Christian concert, and there's gonna be a bunch of bands, there's gonna be a bunch of speakers, and so he decides a little bit begrudgingly that he's gonna go, and so he ends up going to this concert with mom. And at the end, he thinks, well, I didn't hate it. And he didn't have necessarily as bad of experience as he thought, and so he decides afterwards to go up and talk to the pastor. So he goes up to the pastor, and he asks the pastor a couple questions. He starts with, hey, so this whole like Christian thing, being loved by God, being in a relationship with God through Jesus, do I have to stop smoking marijuana to be in a relationship with Jesus? And the pastor said, no. He said, okay, maybe you didn't understand. Do I have to stop getting high to be in a relationship with Jesus? And the pastor says, no. And some of you are like, I'd like to go to that guy's church. He says, okay, let me ask you one more way. And he pulls a big fatty out of his coat. We used to call them fatties, right? I don't know. We did in the 80s, right? So he pulls this, and he's like, no. He's like, look, do I have to give this up to become a Christian? And the pastor says, no. And he goes, well, I don't understand then. And he goes, exactly, you don't understand. And the pastor says, let me ask you a question. He goes, do you have to get cleaned up before you take a shower? And the kid goes, no, you take a shower to get cleaned up. And he goes, bingo. It's exactly that way with Jesus. You don't go clean yourself up to then come to him. You come to him and he does the cleaning. He does the work. And as you begin to walk with him, as you're in relationship with him, as you're abiding with him, as you're obediently responsive to his voice, you know what's going to happen? He's going to start to talk. And he's going to tell you about things in your life, and he's going to address some of the fruit of the flesh that he wants to replace with fruit of the Spirit, but he's going to do that. You don't do that work. You abide. You walk with him. You listen to him, and you're responsive to what he says. That's your job. That's what you do. Do you know the beautiful thing about the love of Jesus isn't that he loved me or loved you because we're lovable? Newsflash, we weren't. It's that he loved us when we weren't, and still chose us and gave his life up for us. Let me give you one more, because I want to double down on this one. Ephesians chapter 2. This is Paul writing, same guy that writes Galatians here that we're reading about the fruit of the Spirit. This is out of a version of the Bible called the Message. I don't usually use the Message because it's more of a paraphrase, but there are times where I love the way that they translate and paraphrase a passage. This is one of them. Paul says this to all of us. It wasn't so long ago that you were mired in that old stagnant life of sin. You let the world, which doesn't know the first thing about living, tell you how to live. And you filled your lungs with polluted unbelief and then exhaled disobedience. And we all did it. All of us doing what we felt like doing and when we felt like doing it. All of us in the same boat. It's a wonder God didn't lose his temper and do away with a whole lot of us. Instead, immense in mercy and with an incredible love, he embraced us. He took our sin-dead lives and made us alive in Christ, and he did it all, this on his own, with no help from us. He does the cleaning. And then he picked us up, and he sat us down in the highest heavens in company with Jesus, our Messiah. One of my favorite memories at the church I came from before I came here was a Sunday we were talking about relationship with Jesus. This guy who was there, I call him a kid, but he's in his 30s. I knew him, but I didn't really know him. I knew his parents pretty well, and I knew this kid had struggled with a lot of things. He had, I think from the time he was 16, he had an addiction to heroin that had just overtaken his life, and it had caused him to really hurt people, rob from his family, abuse his family, his friends, take advantage of, he'd done some pretty despicable things. And he was in our church this Sunday, and afterwards he comes up to me to talk, and as soon as he gets in front of me, we're down on the floor, and he just starts sobbing. And then he collapsed down to his knees on the ground. And so I remember being on the ground with him, and I'm on my knees, and at one point we're both crying. He's not even talking. It's those moments where you try to talk and nothing comes out, and he just keeps crying. And so when he finally was able to start to speak, he just said, I want what you said today about God's love for me to be true. But I have jacked up too much. And this is what he says, I don't know how to clean stuff up enough that I can get to God. I don't know what to do. And I had the opportunity to kneel down with him and say, you're doing exactly what you need to do right now. This is it. You don't need to do anything else to get to him because he does the cleaning. You just need to get to him. I had the privilege of watching him over the next couple of years as God really began to take fruit of the flesh and get rid of it and replace it with fruit of the Spirit as he walked with Jesus. And he had his ups and he had his downs and he had his moments. Sadly, he also had a moment where after almost a year of being clean that he decided to use again, and it was laced. And it took his life. And I tell you that story because here's what I'm convinced of. Even though over the next couple of years, it was a constant up and down journey, and he was in rehab and out of rehab, and he finally had a stent where he seemed like it was gonna last and he was gonna be clean. I am absolutely 1,000% convinced that that young man, when he breathed his last breath here and breathed his first there, he was welcomed into eternity by his loving Father, fully and completely cleansed as a son. God didn't look at him and go, man, but you just screwed it up way too much between the decision and the death. He looked at him and said, I did the cleaning, and I knew what was coming after it, and when you said yes to me, I wiped it all away. The rest of your life wasn't about making you better. You were already clean. It was about replacing the fruit in your life from flesh to spirit. That, listen to me, that is a work that we don't create. That's what he does. Our job is the work of staying connected. Our job is the work of abiding. Now, I think it's important that we look at a couple of pieces of fruit. And so for a few minutes, I just want to take the first three in the passage: love, joy, peace. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to break them down further and keep looking at the rest of the fruit. I do want to only say this, though, and caution us a little bit. As we lean into this and we break it down, we have to for sake of time. We can't go through this whole list, 9 different qualifiers of what the fruit of the Spirit is for the rest of the time today. So it's just practical. We have to break them down and look at them in chunks. Here's the only danger in doing that, is that this is not called fruits of the Spirit. It's fruit. It's singular. It's not plural, which means that we cannot separate these from one another. So you can't be like, well, I'm not very loving, but I am very kind. Like, if you look at the list, go back to the list for a second. Think about it. These are all overlapping. Again, signifying the fact that they're plural. They're not individual. They're singular. He says that fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace. So if you're not very loving, you're probably not going to be very joyful. If you're not very joyful, there's probably not going to be a lot of peace coming out of your life. If you're not a very peaceful person, you're probably not going to be a very patient person. If you're not a patient person, you're probably not going to be a very kind person. So the only thing I want to caution us as we break these out over the next couple of weeks is just realize you don't really get the luxury of going, well, I'm kind, I'm just not patient. This is a fruit, not fruits. So what will happen as we abide is that we should see an increase in all of this happening within our lives. But let's break them down a little bit. Love, joy, peace. So love, here's your question. Does your life reflect the spiritual fruit of love like Jesus? Or, when you look at your life, if you're honest with yourself, is the fruit more of the fruit of the flesh? In other words, you see anger, resentment, temperamental, judgmental. Like, which one do you think is in greater abundance coming out of your life? And just in case you're like, well, I think I'm loving, again, the Bible doesn't leave unclear what shouldn't be unclear. 1 John chapter 4, we give this incredible description of what love is to inform us. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. And everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. And this is how God showed his love among us. All right, so he's going to tell us, here's love. Here's the Jesus kind of love. He says that he sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. So dear friends, since God loved us, we also ought to love one another. So here's what he says. This is love, and he qualifies it, not that we loved him, but that he loved us. In other words, what he's saying is he loved us first. He took the first move. When we didn't deserve it, when it wasn't justifiable, when we didn't earn it, when we weren't worth it per se, when we were still living in a rebellious state, he loved us. He took the first move. He didn't wait for us to get cleaned up. He didn't wait for us to be lovable. He said, I'm going to love you anyways. So here is the fruit of the Spirit kind of love. It's a love that says, I put the other first. I put my spouse first. I put my kids first. It's the decision to push the other first at work, at the coffee shop, in random encounters. Our lives, and especially our way of life, pushes us consistently to push ourselves first. Everything about our life is you go first. You're marketed to relentlessly day in and day out about you, what you want, what you deserve. It's all about you. The way of the gospel, the way of the kingdom is very different. It's upside down compared to our world. It's no, it's not about you, it's about the other. This is the fruit that is not just love, like I love apples and I love tacos and I love sailboarding and no, this is the kind of love that says, no, I love Jesus so much that I put the other first because that's what he did with me. He put me first. And again, if you look at your life and you go, I could grow in this one. Not a lot of love coming out of here, kind of selfish. It's about me, temperamental. This isn't a, hey, go try harder. Go be better. This is go be connected. This should be a reflection, not that you need to just go be more loving. Oh, I'm going to get it done. This is a reflection that something's broken between you and God. There's not closeness. You're not abiding. Or how about joy? Does your life exude the spirit of fruit that is joy? Jesus-like joy? Or is it more cynical, depressed, maybe seeing only the bad, always complaining about people, about things, just glasses always half empty and just uber negative about everything? Like which fruit? Fruit of the flesh or fruit of the spirit tends to be more present, you think, in your life? Now, I want to read a passage out of the book of Psalm. This is David. Again, I want to qualify a little bit of joy and what it's connected to. This is David. If you know David, he was king of Israel. And in chapter 51 of the book of Psalm is following probably David's, one of his greatest moments of failure. If you know the story, you know this, but David at one point, he falls for another man's wife, ends up having an affair with her to try and clean everything up. He decides that her husband, who's a commander in his army, he puts him in the front lines of a battle where it's fiercest fighting, knows he's gonna die, he dies. So he essentially commits murder, he commits adultery, he lies to cover it all up. I mean, he's breaking everything he can. I mean, all kinds of fruit of the flesh coming out of this. Nathan, who's a prophet, is sent by God to confront him. And in that confrontation, David is remorseful and realizes, like, this is all fruit of the flesh. And so in 51, this is him now coming back to God saying, hey, I want to fix this. I want to figure out what do we do. And this is his heart being poured out. Verse 10, he says, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from me. Now watch this. Restore to me the joy of your salvation and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. Do you notice when he says restore to me joy, he doesn't just say restore to me joy because God, I am depressed. I know what I did. I know who I've hurt. I know I've wounded you. And I'm in the pits. I'm just not happy lately. Can you please restore to me some joy? He says joy of what? What did he say? Salvation. He's attaching joy in the experience of it to the experience of sitting in the awareness of God's salvation for him. Here's the point. Nothing will rob your life faster than the joy God intends you to experience than willfully walking in disobedience to his ways of life. God has a way of life. He has expectations of life, not because he's just an authority figure, not because he just wants to be in charge, but because he made this whole thing. And he knows how it works best. Behind all of God's instructions is God's heart. And so David, knowing that he has broken God's instructions, God says to him, listen, if you will just walk in my ways. And David is saying, okay, if I walk out of your ways, nothing faster will strip my joy from me. But here's the opposite as well. Nothing will return joy to you faster than the awareness of the great exchange that has taken place for those of us that have put our hope and trust in Jesus. When he has taken away from us sin and all of its effects, death eternal, separation from God, and in its place, what he has put there instead is power, life eternal, and a vibrant, right now, here relationship with God. Not something that's just ethereal or religious or for someday later in eternity, but a relationship, a friendship with God right now. That's what he's saying. I need the awareness of that back to me again, because in that place, there is no greater joy than to understand the great exchange that has been made when you took my sin and gave me your grace. I mean, the only possible way to even try to comprehend that exchange is that you get caught doing something that gets you in front of a judge in Russia and you're deemed guilty. You're judged and ruled as guilty. You're sent to a Russian hard labor prison for the rest of your life, no chance for parole. And Jesus steps in and says, not today. And he deems you free and innocent and never to be judged guilty again, and then buys you a mansion in the Bahamas on the ocean. Listen, I get that we're not a we're not an amening kind of church and a very responsive kind of church, and that's fine. That's good, necessarily. I mean, we might weird each other out if all of a sudden we're all responsive all the time every Sunday. But there are certain realities that I just hope that in our silence, we're still understanding the beauty and the magnitude of them. When David says, I have screwed it up so much, and because of that, it has robbed me of joy, what will return my joy is not better behavior, it's the awareness of your great grace for me in the face of my great failure. You understand what has been exchanged for you? When you sit in the awareness of the exchange that has been made between your sin and his grace, there is no greater joy you will know than that. So what does your life bear out? Is it joy? Or is it resentment, depression, irritation? Which fruit? And then peace, lastly. Peace. How about Jesus' peace? Does your life bear out the fruit of the Spirit when it comes to peace? Peace that looks like Jesus' peace? Or does it maybe instead look more stressed and worried? When we're stressed and worried, we become busybodies. When we're busy trying to fix things, then we tend up creating a lot of relational conflict and strife and so division. Like, which fruit tends to come more out of your life? Again, let me give you a qualifier. John 14, Jesus is talking to his disciples. And he's talking to them about eternity, and they're kind of freaked out. They're trying to understand this whole thing. He's saying, I'm going away, and I'm going to come again, and they're panicking a little bit. They're starting to get sense from him that something's coming pretty soon, and even though he's laying it down clear that I'm going to be leaving, they're a little bit thick, and so at one point in their worry, he says to them, don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, so believe also in me. For my Father's house has many rooms. If it were not so, wouldn't I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you may be where I am. Verse 27, if you skip down, it says, peace I leave you, my peace I give you, and I don't give it as the world gives. So do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. You heard me say, I am going away, and I am coming back to you. If you loved me, you would be glad that I am going to the Father. For the Father is greater than I. Here's what's interesting, is that as Jesus is talking about peace, he says, I leave you peace. And I don't leave it like the world does. It's a different kind of peace. Because the peace that I leave you is attached to this reality. I'm going away, and I'm coming back. And in the time in between, I'm making a place, and I'm taking you there with me. Now, sometimes in Christianity, we can live a little bit too much with our head in the clouds and only thinking about heaven and giving complete neglect to the world that we're in right now. That's not what he's calling us to do. But there is an overarching reality that Jesus says, there is a peace that you can have in this world no matter what people do to you, no matter what this world takes from you, because what has been done for you and what will be given to you is so much greater that everything that can be done to you here in this world pales in comparison. He says, this is the exchange of worry and stress for my peace, because this world is not the end of your story. There is more. I'm in the presence of writing it right now. I'm in the process of creating it right now, and I'm coming back for you one day to experience it with me. Now again, if you look at your life and you see a decrease in any of these, love, joy, peace, this is not indication to go try harder to be better. I mean, you can try. You're like, I'm going to just go be more loving and peaceful today. You can also go home and jump off the roof and try to fly, and they're all going to result in the same thing, miserable. Like, you just can't make this happen. These aren't indicators to go be better or try harder. They are indicators to go be closer, to get closer with him, spend more time with him, get in this book, talk, read, listen, like pursue Jesus. That's what it's an indication to do. As a matter of fact, even in Galatians, we're told two very key things about this process of what we do in the kind of development of fruit. Verse 16, Paul said, and so I say to you, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. So walk by the Spirit. And then he says in verse 25, since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. So he says, walk by the Spirit, keep in step with the Spirit. Not the same things. When he says walk by the Spirit, he's saying do life with me. This is relationship. Like, spend time with me. Learn to listen to my voice, because God does speak. He speaks in internal places that you'll hear his voice. He also speaks here. He's saying, do relationship with me. During COVID, my wife and I, when everybody's stuck in home and nobody could see each other, we decided to start doing these walks in this park by our house every day. Really shouldn't tell you this, but I told first service, so I'll tell you. We call them our wine walks. We'd take wine and we'd fill up our little travelers and we would just have our wine walks. And that habit is carried on till this is what we do now. Like multiple times a week, we do our wine walks. Even though most of the time now we're actually doing it with hot tea, we still call them wine walks. Our kids are like, you guys are weird. We're like, we know. But we do our walk. And when we're walking together, like Paul's saying, walk with the Spirit, we're talking and we're listening. We're relating. That's what Paul's saying. Relate to God. Don't just believe things about him, relate to him. Be in intentional, passionate pursuit of him, where you listen and you talk, where he listens and he talks, where you're in this book, you're in prayer, like you're just trying to do everything you can to absorb relationship with him. But then he says, stay in step. And when he says stay in step, what he's saying is, as you walk with him, and when you learn things in this book that are his instructions to you, do it. Stay in step. Don't walk out of step with him. As you're walking with him, like the Holy Spirit will speak to you. And there are times that he'll say, hey, this thing in your life, hey, let's deal with that. There are times when he'll say, hey, I would prefer you not to do this. I would prefer you to do this. Not to act like that, but to act like this. The staying in step is when you go, okay. When you're obedient to his voice. When you're obedient to his instruction. Over time, God speaks. And there's so much that he speaks that is the process of trying to replace fruit of the flesh with fruit of the Spirit. And as he speaks, respond, stay in step, do what he says. When I told you last week that my son and I and his bachelor party went on a trip a couple weeks ago. This is my son. He's a total outdoors kid, so he wanted to do a hike down to Mammoth Caves in Kentucky. So that's what we did. And then we did a couple days of back mountain kind of hiking and camping, and there was this one point where we got to one of our campsites, and a couple of the guys had brought hammocks, and one of them was my son. And so we're all setting up camp, and he decides to try and put his hammock up in the worst possible place. So there's this big rocky structure that's probably 15, 20 feet up in the air, and it's this flat, big rock that's slanted 45 degrees, but growing straight up are two trees out of it. And the whole thing's covered in moss. And down below it is this giant pile of just jagged rocks. So here's a picture. Like if you slip off of this, you're at least breaking something. If not, like I'm carrying you home in a stretcher. It's just gonna be a bad day. So he's up here hanging his hammock up, and everybody is like, this is a dumb idea, dude. And so then I'm having this moment where I'm like, all right, I'm dad, but you don't parent a 20-year-old the same way you do a 12-year-old. So I'm like, I can't just say like, stop it. I'm not gonna yell at him. All his buddies are here, his future father-in-law. So I just like, hey, probably a better place to put a hammock. He's like, whatever, old man. I'm like, okay, this is what the Spirit will do, right? He's like, hey. So I'm giving him the hey. So he keeps hanging that thing up. I'm like, hey, moss is pretty slippery, especially when it's covered in dew. That happens every morning. He's like, I'm fine, Dad. Okay. If you have to get out of your hammock in the middle of the night, it's gonna be a little sketchy up there. If you fall, I don't want to tell Bella you died. So he's like, Dad, it's fine. I kid you not. A couple minutes later, he's got both ends strung up. It's right after I took this picture. He comes around to the front side and totally slips. And as he slips, he grabs the hammock, and he's literally like this, and about to fall off. And as he did, this was the best, like total redemption moment. He looked right for me. And he made eye contact with me. He didn't say a word, but I knew. And he knew. And so he started, that was it. I didn't talk. I just watched him go over there and just start untying his hammock. So this is what he ends up doing finally. He comes down and sets up a whole different situation on the ground. Yeah, so totally different scene. I'm like, I'm good with it. So later that night, I just came up to him, I put my arm around him, I just said, hey, I know that was weird. I know you really wanted to be up there, but I appreciate you making the better choice. And he goes, I know, Dad, I know. But this is kind of like walking with the Spirit and staying in step with the Spirit. He'll speak to you. He'll whisper to you. He'll have those moments where he says, hey, probably not a great idea. It's going to get slippery up there. And some of us have had to slip. And some of us slip a lot before we finally go, okay. And when we say okay, we're staying in step. And when we're staying in step, we're not creating fruit, but we're allowing our heart and our soul to become the fertile ground where he creates that fruit. The opposite is that we create hard ground, and it's fruit of the flesh that comes out. May we be so committed to the abiding work in Jesus that what begins to happen, not because you're good enough, but because he is that the fruit of the flesh starts slowly being replaced by the fruit of the Spirit to your benefit and the benefit of everyone around you. So would you sing this last song with us about abiding and make it more than a song, maybe even more than a moment of worship, but a moment of request. Jesus, help us be people that continue to abide.
You are patient,
God, that's our prayer, that you would keep us abiding. So help us with that work. Even as we walk out of here, would you continue, I pray, Holy Spirit, to draw our hearts to yours. In Christ's name, amen. Hey, as you're walking out, just to let you know, kids mini golf, we did have to cancel that because of the weather. Stay tuned for a rescheduled date. Bible Basics and Alpha, head out there, ask some questions. You want to talk about great tools to help us in abiding? Those are two of them. Thanks for being here this morning. Got a prayer team up front. We'd love to serve you before you leave if we can. Otherwise, have a great rest of the day, a week, and we'll see you next Sunday.